Shouldn't be too bad.
It's in pretty good shape. Looks nice. Runs nice. Got 4-cylinder and they would all have 130.
Hey, it's not all rusted out.
No.
What's ahead?
Seeger. Heard of the teeth challenge?
Sorry about that. I'm just adjusting my my monopod height.
They turn around and sell them.
Good evening. This is Occupier Kayleen coming to you from the auditorium in Olin Hall here on the Drake University campus. Two ex-CIA analysts will be talking about drones, the reasons why the drone policy of the United States and other countries have failed. And so they're just doing some presentation setup. Earlier I was at the Des Moines airport where the Iowa National Guard has its base, and we did a protest out there, and a few people driving by on the street that goes in front of that particular side of the airport, they honked at us. So there are about 30 people there at that demo, and when I get home after this tonight, I will put both of these videos up on YouTube. So they will be archived there on my YouTube channel. People are starting to fill the space. And a couple of signs are put up on the whiteboard over there. Just kind of emphasize the theme of tonight's talk, which should be quite interesting, considering that CIA analysts are the ones who are talking about the reasons why the drone policy has failed. So, if you cannot read that, this picture says, "Neck deep in the big muddy," and the big fool said to cash out. Or said to push out, sorry. Big Muddy refers to the Mississippi River. That's the nickname it has. Can I also have one of those cards? If you have enough, that'd be great. Thanks. And
we have a mutual friend, David.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I know he's copied you and a couple of emails. Long before that group existed, and so Dave and I helped found it. I just introduced myself.
My tablet slid off my thigh, so another guy picked it up and gave it to me, so I was tucking it into my purse. But anyway, the postcards that she gave me, I'll show you the front side. This is questions to ask politicians who are running for office about the current war machine, who died, who lied, who pays and who profits. And back on this side, I don't know if I can focus this. Does the U.S. really need 700 military bases? Here we go, it's about to start.
Thank all of you for coming tonight. Welcome. My name is David Skidmore. I'm a professor of political science here at Drake University. I'm also director of the Principal Financial Group Center for Global Citizenship, which is hosting tonight's event in collaboration with sponsors Iowa Veterans for Peace, Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, American Friends Service Committee, and there are a long list of other endorsers. So we're very happy to welcome Ray McGovern and Colleen Raleigh here tonight. We're going to speak on the use and abuse of U.S. intelligence. Let me say, before I tell you a little bit more about our speakers, let me mention an upcoming event that might interest you. We're going to be sponsoring a talk by Alfredo Lopez on Afro-Indigenous Hondurans in Resistance, the U.S. drug war, violent displacement, and migration. And that is co-sponsored with Witness for Peace. That will be on October 8th at 6 p.m. in Meredith 101 on, I can't remember which way up to point now.
Kind of hard when you're inside a building.
Two-story black building in the middle of campus. So I know some of you will be able to join us for that event. So let me just give you a little bit of background. Ray McGovern was a CIA analyst for 27 years, spanning the presidencies from John F. Kennedy to George Herbert Walker Bush. He chaired the National Intelligence Estimates, which is plays a key role in the U.S. intelligence process. And during the 1980s, he routinely prepared morning briefings, intelligence briefings for the president. Upon his retirement in 1990, McGovern received the CIA's Intelligence Commendation Medal. In 2006, he returned the medal in protest at the CIA's involvement in torture. He has in recent years emerged as a leading voice in calling for reform and accountability in America's intelligence system. He's joined tonight by Colleen Raleigh, who grew up in Iowa, graduated from Wartburg College, University of Iowa Law School. She worked for the FBI for 24 years. After 9/11, she exposed lapses in the FBI's investigation of terrorist Zacarias Moussaoui that left the U.S. vulnerable to attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. For her role as a whistleblower, she received Time Magazine's Person of the Year award in 2002. Before I welcome, Colleen is going to speak first. Before I welcome her to join us, I'm going to ask Ed Flaherty with Iowa Veterans for Peace to just say a few words, please.
Thanks very much. It's a privilege to be here. I'm Ed Flaherty with Veterans for Peace. There are 3 chapters of Veterans for Peace in the state of Iowa, and together we have sponsored this tour of Colleen Raleigh and Ray McGovern through Iowa. They started in Dubuque on the 24th, and this is the final event of their tour. The purpose of the tour sort of comes from the idea that peace does not happen like manna falling from the heavens. It takes work. And these are 2 exquisite and uniquely qualified spokespeople for peace. So we felt really privileged that they were able to come, but listening to their talk is not the end of it. They're going to urge you to do a few things after that. So I'm very thankful for Drake University for hosting this event, and I'm very thankful to all the other groups that have helped co-sponsor this event tonight and the whole tour. So, working for peace, that's why we're here tonight. I hope that everybody got a one of these green little sheets as they came in, just a little bit of advice in terms of what kinds of questions you might think of asking presidential candidates as they swarm like mosquitoes through the state of Iowa. Actually, I should not speak badly of that. We have a very unique opportunity in the next few months. So we're urging you to take that responsibility very seriously and to consider bird dogging candidates. Bird dogging, asking them, preparing yourself to ask them questions and doing it. Ask them questions that they wouldn't normally get.
Someone
And
is taking
I would
pictures
like
with a
to,
flash.
say that there's going to be an event on campus here tomorrow, put on by the American Friends Service Committee at the Des Moines Valley Friends meeting, which is bird dogging training, and that is at 7:30 at 4211 Grand Avenue. Kevin Rutledge and Hector are here in back. They're going to lead that bird dogging effort. So we're sort of subversive allies here, Veterans for Peace and American Friends Service Committee, in this dangerous effort to work for peace in the country. Today they didn't call it peace; they called it
deconfliction.
Deconfliction, a new word that so whatever it is,
Dictionary
we need
makers
more
are
of
going to
it.
have a heck of a time.
Thank
New
you.
terms
Thank
that
you
are
so
coming
very
out.
much for having Colleen and Ray here. Good night.
Well, can everyone hear me? Okay. You've had a long time to stare at this screen and try to remember where this idea of neck deep in the big muddy came from. How many people in the audience know? I was kind of warned that there wouldn't be that many because it came from 1968. And I think we are at a similar moment. And there's some news today that could, I hope I'm not being wishful thinking, but there is some good news today that maybe finally we have turned course and are wading back out of this neck deep in the big muddy back to higher moral ground. So this song, for those who don't know, was sung by Pete Seeger in 1968, critical midpoint of the Vietnam War, and he was censored on the Smothers Brothers. So a song, that's pretty unusual to be censored, and if you listen to the song, you might even wonder today why you would be censored. But it's about a military maneuver where they're trying to wade across a river. They start off knee-deep, and of course they can't turn back. The big fool says to push on, that's their captain. And then they're waist-deep, and at the end, the captain is neck-deep, and he goes under and he drowns. And then the rest of the men say, turn around, we're going back. Well, that was considered such a metaphor with the Vietnam War at the time that they censored it. So how does use of intelligence and abuse of intelligence fit in with that? Well, again, really in about the same time, there's just a few months difference here. One of the CIA analysts that was actually a colleague of Ray McGovern's, his name was Sam Adams, had been to Vietnam, had been analyzing the enemy troop strength for months and months a year, and his figures came out that the enemy troop strength was much higher than General Westmoreland and the other generals were willing to tell the public and the media. And the reason for one of these abuses of intelligence or fixing the intelligence at that time was because they didn't want to have the public go sour on the war. You know, what they ended up calling Vietnam Syndrome. So when you learn these truths about the war, now at the same time, in same year, 1968, Walter Cronkite, who was reporting on the war, you know, he got intelligent about it, and he actually then, he had 60% of the American public watching Walter Cronkite, and he went out and said the war is unwinnable. And so there's been an effort ever since to kind of to defeat Vietnam syndrome, which is that when people learn the truths about intelligence and whatever, they might become against unwinnable wars that are creating terrible, disastrous impacts and are blowing back even on the American public. So I'm going to talk a little bit about 9/11 and explain that the solution to peace and to reducing terrorism had nothing to do with launching wars on Afghanistan and Iraq, and then, of course, the series of actually war crimes, violating the law, committing torture, and then kidnapping black sites, turning on massive data gathering on all of us, innocent people, non-relevant information on our emails and communications that we now have learned through Edward Snowden. That was done right after 9/11. In fact, initially it was done in even a more intrusive way beyond metadata. It was actually content. And they did it based on war powers. They have secret legal memos that were written, a whole series of them by John Yoo and others, beginning 2-3 weeks after 9/11. And these memos said that the First Amendment no longer is that important because we're in war. The exigencies of war have to take a first spot. And in essence, there's an old quote by Cicero: "In times of war, the law falls silent." And that means that your principles that have stood the test of time, your Constitution, your First Amendment rights of freedom of press and association and speech, your Fourth Amendment right not to be violated by an unreasonable search or seizure, your right not to be coerced into a confession, which is what was violated by torture, all of those rights in law, and as well, those are our domestic, constitutional rights, but in addition to that, the treaty law. And the treaty law is, one of the main things is the Geneva Convention. So beginning in January of 2002, just a few months after 9/11, there is a memo also drafted by John Yoo and Robert Delahunty, and this one said that we need to worry about military necessity, and if it's a military necessity, we won't be following the Geneva Conventions. Now, and of course, this is that went out to the troops, and of course, people think they now have the green light. If you're operating at Abu Ghraib or at Guantanamo or the CIA, you believe, well, now it's been legalized. Everything that I thought was the rule of law has now been legalized, and eventually we get even to the drone assassination, which is illegal, but there are memos now that have tried to justify this legally through different ways. Okay, so those, in my opinion, are all really terrible non-fixes to the problems that existed before 9/11. The problem largely before 9/11, and this is not Colleen Rowley, this is not just me now, I'm really just repeating what the various official inquiries found. Now, it took them a couple of years, and sometimes even longer, to come out with these, and by that time, people had lost interest, and they were already in the Iraq War, and so they had already gone on to these fixes for the problem, which weren't, so they really weren't paying very much attention. But the real problems were the failure to share information. Okay, wasn't that there was too much secrecy, in other words. Okay, and it wasn't just secrecy inside of agencies where information was blocked. In the case in Minnesota, the information was blocked actually inside the internal in the FBI. That's one example. There were also cases where the CIA had been tracking a couple of the terrorist suspects for a couple of years. They had been tracking them all over the world. They had actually a very short list at the time. I think there were only about 16 names on the CIA's terrorist watch list at the time of 9/11. 2 of them were really and maybe even more, were the actual hijackers. Okay, not now, we have 1 million because of this gathering of non-relevant info, but back then it was quite accurate. But that information was not shared with the FBI until very